Right, welcome back. Let's continue with our chat. Champion women's rights. As we commemorate Human Rights Month, this march is crucial, especially with issues like gender inequality. GBVF still disempower a large percentage of the population, with unique scenarios unfolding for the country and the continent. And so this comes despite the enormous strides that, of course, have been taken over the past 31 years of democracy in a South African context. So this morning, Nthabiseng Montsho, head of the Ministry of Women, Social and Economic Development in the state of the African Diaspora, weighs in for more. Nthabiseng, good morning. Thank you for making time to chat with us.
Thank you, Liesl.
I think for context's sake, perhaps you could provide us with some information about the SOAD at large, the impact that its work has had in the region. I think beyond that, though, if we're looking at human rights during March, what does justice then look like in relation to women?
Justice in relation to women, Liesl, is still a very difficult subject. Even at this day and age. And when we speak justice, it's just merely giving women rights to live and exist like any other gender. So in the state of the African diaspora, what we have done is that we have been signing cooperation agreements with various presidents in the region, more especially to ensure that we bring about programs which empower women. So in my ministry at the State of the African Diaspora, as Minister of Women's Social and Economic Development, my work is making sure that women get recognized and they get ownership even to land, because now we know that there's poverty. There's a lot of things that women are challenged with. So what we do is that we make sure that we ensure that women are recognized and they understand who they are, so that they can be able to get into the space of leadership in every other spaces that as women deserve, because they're also humans. Recognition,
equality, equity, economic empowerment, equal pay. I mean,
food sovereignty.
Absolutely. I wonder if you want to speak about some of those specific projects then that has been unfolded in relation to the work you've done.
So they are unfolding because I have just been recently appointed. So it's literally about 3 months in the office, you know. However, the programs that I intend with my team in South Africa and in the African continent is to ensure, number one, that women are able to get equal opportunities, even in leadership spaces. We're talking in political spaces where women, even at this day and age, are still struggling with, you know, to walk into their leadership without being told that you are a woman, you are emotional, therefore it means you can't lead. When I speak on food sovereignty, I mean that women must take control in communities to actually be able to get to produce food for communities, so that they can be able to be the one who exports food to other countries. When we talk gender equality, which is one of the programs that we're doing with the women in the diaspora, to talk and educate and conscientize women about them being equal, seeing themselves as humans as well, because we continue to see patriarchy taking precedence even at this day and age.
Speaking about that social construct, we have to also look at the ways we support survivors of violence. There's the issue of GBVF as well. There's this national strategic plan, questions about the way funds are going to be allocated. There's still so many more gaps. So at this point, it seems like it's a lot of talk shop rather than tangible results. And time is ticking. People are losing their lives. What more can be done? What are the gaps that you still find needs to be addressed at large?
When we summoned the president for NSP's, the National Strategic Plan on the gender-based violence and femicide, it was because we could see that following the COVID pandemic, gender-based violence has become the second pandemic. So now that COVID has gone down, it means that gender-based violence and femicide is the first pandemic in the country. There is still no justice, Liesl. I can tell you right now, I was speaking with a lady who says that she was violated on her way to church in South Africa. She was raped. And when she went to open the case, first of all, the perpetrator was threatening to kill her, sending hitmen on her. But it didn't end there. The justice system in the courts itself, before we even get to the courts, in the police stations, even the police officers are not really sensitive enough to take care of the needs of the people who come to report these cases. In the court systems, how the court systems work is that the victims get secondary victimization, because when she was explaining that, they were asking her, when he penetrated you, how was it? You know, how did you feel? This is something that actually continues the trauma. Yeah. And we look at the backlog in the laboratories of the cases of women. I'm talking rape. I'm not talking about any other issue at this stage, where there's so many perpetrators who are gallivanting, and the government knows about it. We knew that there's about 4 laboratories that are supposed to take care of these cases, and we discovered that there's only 2 labs that are there with a whole lot of backlog of cases. It was back in 2022 when this thing was discussed. This is 2025. We're still faced with the same issue.
What is that multi-pronged approach then that needs to unfold between government, civil society, even on litigation front as well, given the realities on the ground?
I think I'm going to take a different approach in answering this one. I want women to stand up and take charge of their lives. If we're still going to depend on government for freedom, and for us to be recognized as women, we will still continue with this fight. I think now it is for civil society to stand and take charge and allow women in spaces where they can be given the space to be in charge and rule and lead, so that they can be able to, because we have solutions. And if we have the solutions, let us be allowed in that space to be able to bring change.
No, I appreciate that, but I mean, I think legislation also gives the framework, you know, and allows us to navigate that infrastructure that creates that enabling environment. Lack of timelines is also an issue, because accountability and transparency then, you know, isn't upheld. I wonder if you could speak to that at large also, given the scourge of GBVF.
Legislation is good because it's written by the people who are not actually on the ground, who do not even understand sometimes the dynamics of the poorest of the people, especially women who are going through gender-based violence on the ground, or human rights in general. So legislations are good on paper. I have seen even in the space, in the UN space, where there would be some ministers presenting what is happening on the ground, not presenting what is the true reflection of what is happening on the ground, so that the country can look well. So it's very important right now that even when legislation is there, yes, we have to follow the guidelines because we are ruled by a constitutional space. Yes. However, we also need to understand that if they are not held accountable, then nothing is going to move. I mean, if the legislation was very good, why are we still finding ourselves with these appalling statistics of deaths of women, of the women going through gender-based violence, and even in the African continent, where there's also spaces where women are also being dictated to, where their bodies are being mutilated for men's satisfaction. So it's a whole lot of things that if we do not open our eyes as women from now on, we will still continue to be under the rulership of people who want us as objects, but not as their equal.
As we wrap up, Thema, I want to look at, so we passed, 31 years of democracy. We're entering 31 years of democracy. We're looking at the strides, and we will acknowledge that, but the gaps as well. So if we're going to imagine or reimagine the roadmap, what the next 31 years looks like in relation to women for our society at large. Paint that picture. What are you envisioning then?
I'm envisioning women who are conscientized and who are self-aware of who they are, not fully dependent on the governments. Yes, we see the strides. They can do up to so much. Let us be realistic, Liesl. Sure. If we have almost 60 million people in South Africa, more than half the population thereof is women, how is the government going to take care of the people? So I think it's time that people open their minds to transformation and to also look within to be leaders and be able to take charge in various sectors, whether it's in the agricultural space, in the banking industry, mining space, and all these spaces, and push those doors without any fear or favor of any guy who is there with big suits, but allowing themselves, like women in the 1956 who went there, let women in 2025 rise in that manner and take charge in their own personal lives, in their bodies, and what happens around them. And they must fight and not be fearful.
Equity, equality, inclusivity, agency. Thank you. Thank you for your time and for chatting and for sharing those sentiments. This morning, Nthabiseng Montsho, Head of Ministry of Women, Social and Economic Development and State of the African Diaspora, weighing in as we, of course, commemorate Human Rights Month in South Africa, specifically championing women's rights coming to the fore during this conversation.